Hello, this is John Benson. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Today, I'm going to give you some of my personal thoughts and comments on a book right here, Angle of Repose, Wallace Stegner. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I have no idea. It won the Pulitzer somewhere in the early 70s, or 1970, somewhere in there. And which is the reason why I read it, and I heard about this on a PBS or NPR book list as one of the books that everybody should read, or whatever, 100 best books. It's an interesting book. I'm saying it's interesting writing-wise because it does something kind of like what Frankenstein did, but I like Frankenstein better. In this book, a protagonist, the person that you meet, is writing a book about his grandparents, his grandmother and grandfather, and really about their relationship, their marriage, and what it meant to them to be married in the 1870s or whatever, in Victorian times. And he's doing this, it appears, because he's having issues in his own marriage. His wife and him are no longer together and haven't been for years, I guess. I'm not. Anyway, a long time since she had an affair. And he is in a wheelchair, and hence he starts calling this angle of repose, and it's this angle of repose that his grandmother is referring to, that she got as a term from the grandfather, who is an engineer working in mines and canals and dams and that sort of thing of that era of the 1870s, of when the grandparents lived, that time. He knew his grandparents. The protagonist knew his grandparents before they died, and as a child. And now he's grown up and he's reading the letters. Sometimes he paraphrases the letters in the book. Sometimes he includes the whole letter in the book, and that's also another one of those interesting things to me, whatever, as an English literature person or student or whatever, because having a book made of letters is an old-fashioned style of doing things. Frankenstein also had that in there in a bit, and Bram Stoker's Dracula, or Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula, did his book also with epistles, letters. So, epistolary. Anyway, those are interesting. It's interesting, this angle of repose, in that the author himself is talking about it at the beginning of the book, and then there's a few references. It's not very common reference, doesn't keep coming up, but later on in the book we get to the part where the grandfather mentions this term, and it is having to do with the walls of a canal and how they are digging them to be the angle of repose, so the angle where the pebbles and the dirt doesn't slide off anymore. If it's too high up, then everything will crumble. But if you get the right angle, then things won't roll off of it anymore. Great. It's a fun thought to think about, I suppose, when you apply that to relationships, and what angle, or how is it then you can be with somebody without argument, tension, friction, the friction of the rolling, the things don't just slide away. Whatever types of references you get to. And spoiler alert, this is an old book, I don't worry about, I'm gonna, if I say spoilers or whatever, but when his wife comes back and they talk about the happiness in a marriage, or happiness or unhappiness, or does there have to be one or the other, happy or happiness? Can't there be something in the middle, that angle of repose, I suppose? And so that she can be with him to some extent, to where he isn't feeling so angry and upset about her being there, and obviously what happened and everything. So can that be? Can they still have a life together in some way? It's an interesting thought, and I was impressed by the way this book, which is fairly lengthy at over 600 pages, it kept me going through the book. I mean, it wasn't a book that I was like, oh, I couldn't put it down. I could put it down, but at the same point, it pulled me through the entire book here fairly well. It wasn't the most difficult read. And what I find impressive about that is that there's no car chases. There isn't a whole lot going on. Mostly it's the story of the grandparents living in some little cabin or wherever it is, in Mexico or in San Jose or Santa Cruz or whatever little house and whatever little this or little that that they're living in, but there isn't a whole lot going on. Even when the mining or digging, whatever is going on, there isn't a whole lot of description about that. There isn't a whole lot of description about the actions going on. It's all about the relationship between the grandparents. It's all about how they are managing under difficult circumstances, whether that be the living circumstances or the personal circumstances between them, having the kids, the wife being torn between wanting to be her, genteel or a Victorian woman from the East Coast, and trying to deal with the West Coast, but that doesn't really matter. What really matters is just the relationship between the two, and how they speak to each other, how they think about it, how they try to be kind to each other, how things aren't kind between them, how these things happen, and it does that very well. I suppose that is why it won the Pulitzer. There is some discussion. There's this interesting contrast that the book is also doing between the Victorian era and what's going on there between people and what's going on in the late 60s, early 70s in the Berkeley area with hippies and all that stuff. So there's a little comparison there. Not a lot. It's kind of, but it's fun. It's a fun bit of color in what is a very tame or whatever, not very action-oriented book, which I enjoy. That it's nice to have a real story that doesn't have to need that sort of mechanics, other things going on in it. All that, it doesn't need the action to move the story. So in that way, it was very well done, and it was very interesting. I was very interested in the characters. That's what it does. That's to me is what makes a book or a movie or TV show or anything good or worth watching or compelling or whatever, however, meaning that I'm interested in watching it is if I'm interested in the characters in that story. So the book does a very good job of that. Each character is fun because every one of the characters has certain quirks, whatever it might be, and also that they're all flawed. Every one of them has their own things that they struggle with, just like we all do. But each one of them are really trying to do the right thing, even though they fail. So that's a good story, good book. If you care to pick it up and read it, Angle of Repose. Interesting book from around the early 70s there. Who knew? All right. Hope everybody's doing great. Hope you enjoyed the video. And hope everybody's being safe and healthy and all that stuff and everything's good. Talk to you later.